one of our volunteers. It starts off as, my journey to becoming a volunteer with the Alzheimer's Association began with my dad. My dad was a tool and die maker, primarily designing and building equipment to produce medical products. He was also a lifelong smoker. Because of his smoking habit, he had multiple small strokes leading to vascular dementia. The vascular dementia led to a decline in his cognitive abilities. Just before his final illness, he had deteriorated to the point that he would no longer be able to live independently. Although this is a different pathway than Alzheimer's disease, the local Alzheimer's Association was a great resource to help me in caring for him. Before retirement, I worked as a registered nurse for 47 years. The last 20 years of my career, I was a clinical nurse specialist on a neuro floor. This put me in frequent contact with patients with Alzheimer's, as well as their family. I was able to observe the devastation this disease had on the families, and I frequently refer them to the Alzheimer's Association as a resource for information and support. When I retired, I knew that I didn't want to just be at home. I still wanted to contribute to the community. Because of my personal and professional experiences, being a community educator for the Alzheimer's Association seemed to be the perfect fit. It is a role that I enjoy, and I believe that it helps the people who I interact with. Wonderful story. Thank you for sharing this, and I'm so honored to be able to share it with everyone on this call today.
Thank you, Douglas. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Merle. Merle is one of our faithful volunteers with the Greater Richmond chapter. And Merle, please share your story.
Merle, you're muted.
I think you're muted.
Okay, try again. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, you're
Okay.
good. Go ahead.
Sorry. My mother was the fourth in her maternal line to develop dementia. Unlike her predecessors who began to show signs in their mid to late 80s, she was about 70. Mom was living in Florida, so I didn't see or recognize the signs. She got lost going to the doctors, but she never had a sense of direction. She couldn't decide what to order at a restaurant, and then she stopped paying her bills. After a particularly challenging visit, I contacted the Richmond office and met with a member of the helpline staff, Nancy Lentz. She patiently explained to me what was going on, how to address each situation, and what to be prepared for going forward. Some of the guidance she provided me should have been common sense. I just could not know what I did not know at the time. When I left the office, I knew where I was with my mother on our journey. At the end of the conversation, I asked if they had any volunteer opportunities. After completing the training, I became a volunteer for the helpline and became a support group facilitator. Volunteering on the Alzheimer's helpline showed me I wasn't alone and that I had something to share. I learned how to listen better, how to think before speaking, and to be patient, mostly by eavesdropping on my mentors. I came to realize how important it was to give caregivers who called to somebody to talk with. I even learned how to take my own advice. Volunteering gave me the tools to care for my mother, such as how to use communication to prevent and manage challenging behaviors, when to take over responsibilities she could no longer manage, and how to protect and advocate for her, especially as she moved from independent living to assisted living to memory care. And yes, we did bring her to Richmond, starting with assisted living. Sometimes this meant guiding the people charged with caring for my mother. I learned that when your loved one has not yet been diagnosed, but doesn't seem to be the person you're used to, it's time to contact the helpline. Don't wait until they pick a fight with a neighbor, wander away, or take the car and can't find their way home. It's too easy to deny that your spouse or parent is having memory issues, but it may also be unsafe. The association staff and volunteers provide resources and guide you on how to talk to your loved one and your family about Alzheimer's disease and begin action planning while the person who may have dementia is still able to specify their desires. Every volunteer should acquaint themselves with the Alzheimer's Association website. It is not only an amazing source of information, it is a lifeline. There are numerous articles that integrate the information, online training opportunities, links to face-to-face support groups, online chat groups, and updates on current research. I continue to facilitate the Brandon Mills support group after almost 13 years. Since COVID, we have continued to meet by teleconference, even gaining some new members. It is so rewarding to be able to guide caregivers, family members, and friends through the long journey that is Alzheimer's and related dementias by providing valuable information and caregiving tips. To encourage caregivers to open up and discuss their situation, and to inspire all the members of the group to share their experience and provide support and encouragement to each other. We are a small community. Some members who have lost their loved ones continue to drop in, and 2 have actually become facilitators. Lastly, I have learned as much or more from my support group members as they may have learned from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Merle, for sharing your story. We really do appreciate you and everything that you do for the association, providing care and support to caregivers through your support group and just being there for those families who need us the most. At this time, we're going to move forward and have, oh, thank you. At this time, we're going to move forward with a video of our facts and figures. All right, so what does data tell us? Data gives us real-time data that we can provide to our communities and prospective volunteers. It gives us that chance to be strategic in our work and get off the endless treadmill of activity. And lastly, it involves our full mission and community visibility and the goal to expand our reach in our programs and everything that we do. We want to make sure that the association can be seen as a resource for the community, health planning, and health promotion for all people, and not just viewed as simply providing services to caregivers or being in the town for fundraising. Tina, can you advance? Thank you. So this slide here, we're going to talk more in specific about data in the state of Virginia. So each year, data is gathered by the association based on each state individually. So the next few slides will give us just a small little screenshot of some of those statistics. On this slide here, you can see the number of people age 65 and older with Alzheimer's according to the age groups. You can see on the first line the numbers for 2020 for each age category, and you can see the different categories listed out there, for a total of 150,000 in the state of Virginia for 2020. The next line gives us an estimate on how many in Virginia will have Alzheimer's by the year of 2025. Again, each age category has its total listed in the chart for a total of 190,000 in the state of Virginia by the year of 2025. The graph shows us that there's an increase, the percentage change from 2020 to 2025 among all ages of 65 and up, with an increase estimated at 26.7%, and that's just in 25 years and only in the state of Virginia. On the next slide, we will see more numbers based on the state of Virginia and the data that we have. The number of deaths in Virginia just from Alzheimer's proper in 2018 was 2,592, which is the sixth leading cause of death. And this does not include all the other dementias. As I mentioned, it is Alzheimer's proper, and that was in 2018. On the side, you will see the number of people age 65 and older with, whoa, I'm on the wrong thing, sorry. When we look at the 2019 caregiving numbers, these numbers are very shocking to us. As you can see, there are 467,000 caregivers in the state of Virginia in 2019. A total of 532 million hours of unpaid care given by caregivers for those impacted by Alzheimer's. And a total value of unpaid care by caregivers was over $6.9 billion. So our caregivers give a lot of themselves and a lot of their time to provide care for those living with Alzheimer's. Next slide. In this next chart, you will see different categories related to those living alone with Alzheimer's. This data shows us that there's a significant number of people living alone with dementia. For those who live alone, the challenges of Alzheimer's place them at greater risk for falls, malnutrition, and wandering. Among those with dementia who live alone, 1 in 5 cannot get dressed by themselves. 1 in 5 cannot even use a toilet. Nearly 1 in 3 cannot bathe. Over 38% cannot go outside. Nearly half cannot take their medicine, and more than half cannot manage their money. Next slide. Now I would like to take some time and deep dive into some of the service data for the Greater Richmond chapter and the Central and Western Virginia chapter. And the areas were chosen to focus on because those are the areas that I mentioned at the very beginning that I provide support to. So I'm more familiar with these numbers. However, each chapter has their data-specific numbers related to the areas that they serve. So for the Greater Richmond chapter, we service 24 counties and 5 cities. Last year in Greater Richmond, the Greater Richmond chapter supported 5,528 new families. And we interacted with them more than 8,750 times. This represents, the chart there that you see represents the percentage of people served in each county over the age of 65. And although we are above the national average of 0.67%, we are servicing less than 5% of the people over the age of 65 who are impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia. Next slide. On this slide, you will see a chart that shows several counties that are served by the Greater Richmond chapter. The chart on the left will show you the number of people over the age of 65 living in that particular county. The list on the right shows how many new families we reached over the age of 65 in that county, along with the percentage. So when we look at Chesterfield County, there's over 55,000 people over the age of 65 in that county alone. Of those 55,000 plus, Greater Richmond serves 795 new constituents over the age of 65 for a percentage of 1.42%. You can see the numbers there for the other counties: Henrico, Spotsylvania, Hanover, Richmond, and Gloucester. And even though the volunteers and staffs of Greater Richmond reach new families, you can see that we still have many who have not been reached. Next slide. In the midst of chaos, there is also opportunity. We all know that no matter how hard we work, no matter what we do, there is always the opportunity to grow. On the next slide, you will see the service area for the Central and Western chapter. This chapter serves 51 cities and counties in the Central and Western regions of Virginia. It includes Charlottesville, Danville, Harrisonburg, Lynchburg, and Roanoke, along with many other counties. The map here also shows the percentage of persons over the age of 65 that were served last year. But I also want to make note, as you're looking at the map, that you will notice that you may notice the numbers look different in some counties. Some counties might have a 0. That's not saying that those counties were not served. All of the counties in our service areas have had programs, events, and resources provided to them. But when we look at these charts and maps, the data is based on the information that is given to us by those in attendance. So if someone shares that they are African American, we take that data. If they share their exact age, we're able to capture that data. So this is just based off of data that is captured from the constituents themselves. If they choose to not share that information with us, then obviously we don't capture that they were over the age of 65 and that we provided service to them. So even though there are zeros on this chart, please know that all of these counties have received programs and services that we do provide, and we are reaching all of our counties in our service area. Next slide. So I've already mentioned the same information for the Greater Richmond chapter, and so now again I will touch briefly on it for the Central and Western chapter. The chart on the left again shows the number of people over the age of 65 that live within each of these areas. The list on the right will show you how many new families we reached over the age of 65 for that particular county and the percentage. So when we look at Roanoke, there are over 20,000 people that are over the age of 65 in that area. Of those 20,000 plus, the chapter served 120 new constituents, which is 0.58% of those over the age of 65. And again, you can see the numbers for the other areas. We have Charlottesville, I say Stanton, you might say Staunton, Waynesboro area, and the Danville area. And again, even though the volunteers and staff of Central and Western Virginia chapter have reached new families, we can easily see that there is still more work to be done. And so the next slide is going to talk about some gender and racial differences in Alzheimer's prevalence. Almost 2/3 of Americans with Alzheimer's are women. Older Blacks and African Americans, Hispanics, and Latinos are disproportionately more likely than older whites to develop Alzheimer's or another form of dementia. And on the next slide, you will see a chart that has quite a bit of data on it. And what happened here is each of the different race, ethnic groups are listed here. And you can see on the right-hand side for the Greater Richmond chapter, those who are over the age of 65 and identified themselves in one of these categories, that's the number that was reached for the grand total of 266,474. On the next slide, we're going to talk about diversity and inclusion. On the left, you'll see the number represents the number of new African American persons over the age of 65 in each county that was serviced in 2019. The graphic on the right shows the number of African Americans over 65 in that county. So the one on the right has the total number of those in that county who have identified as African American over the age of 65. And on the left, you can see how many of those that we were able to reach last year in 2019. These numbers highlight two major points for us. One, there's still much more work that we need to do. And two, we need to target our efforts to better support those in the high impact communities. Now we're going to take a look at the volunteer performance for the Greater Richmond and Central and Western chapters. And again, I will say that these numbers are provided to you because those are the service areas that I am supporting the volunteers in. So these numbers were drawn from last year's fiscal year of 2019. We had 195 active trained volunteers that were deployed between both Central and Western Virginia chapter and the Greater Richmond chapter. Of those 195 volunteers, only half, which is about 99, provided any programs of any form last year. Of those, they all averaged 8 programs per volunteer, totaling 802 programs and reaching 7,568 constituents. Next slide. 33 educators provided 274 programs with an average attendance of 15 people per program. 55 support group facilitators provided 530 groups with an average of 7 people per group. And lastly, we had 6 early stage social engagement volunteers delivering a total of 29 programs with an average of 15 people per program. And I will end with a quote that says, "I don't know how Alzheimer's has impacted you, but let me tell you how you can impact Alzheimer's." And the way that I answer that is become a community educator. Without community educators, we can't expand our reach. We can't reach those new families who are impacted by Alzheimer's and other dementias. Our numbers won't change without the help of our volunteers. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Douglas.
Thank you, Rachel. And when it comes to the importance of virtual delivery during this time, as you know, because of COVID, we are unable to do in-person programming, just for the safety of our volunteers, for the safety of the families that we deal with, and for the safety of our staff. So we transitioned everything to virtual programming. And when we talk about virtual programming, we have some opportunities that are available for you. And those opportunities are virtual community educators or virtual community representatives. program tech support to help those that are doing virtual presentations or education classes and need assistance with the tech. And then we have virtual support group facilitators as well. And these are new opportunities that are available. A lot of our volunteers that we have already are transitioning to virtual educators. I have community educators that were doing in-person presentations last year that are now transitioned into doing virtual community education using various platforms such as Zoom. And same thing with virtual community representatives. Instead of being able to go out to health fairs, we're trying to do community representation virtually. Through webinars, through different groups. And then we have our program tech support that is helping those individuals through those processes, because not everybody is familiar with the tech, but they can do, they like to speak or they like to provide education, but they just have a hard time with the tech. So we do have that's available as well. And we're going to talk about support groups, virtual support groups in a little bit. But if you're interested, and one way to get involved with that is I'm going to give you a little demo here. So I am going to share my screen, if I can here. Oh, I lost it. I am not able to share my screen. Ah, there we go. I wanted to share my screen here just to show you that there are various ways to get involved with the association. One way is if you're looking for to get involved and find a volunteer opportunity, if you go to alz.org and click on the link here that says get involved, you'll see volunteer opportunities, there's advocacy, there's many different ways. You click on volunteer and you can see these are the different opportunities that we have available. Community educator is a big one. And let's say we click on that and it gives you the description. It takes you to our volunteer website, which we call the Program Volunteer Community, or PVC. And from here, you'll be able to read the description of the program and then also apply for that program. And for our current volunteers, this website, or our Program Volunteer Community, is very helpful for them because there's a wealth of information to help them succeed in any project that they're working on. On the home page, you'll see there's a lot of information that's available resources, the latest discussions that have been going on, and then even upcoming events for their area. When you want to learn more about volunteering, if you click on that, it tells you our nationwide volunteer opportunities, but also our virtual opportunities. And by clicking on that, you'll see all those virtual opportunities that I mentioned earlier are listed, and you can learn more about them and then also apply for them right from the website. Also, for when it comes to our volunteers, they can gather information. Not only do we put them through training, it's all done virtually now, but you can get keep up with your onboarding process, all the paperwork and training that's needed. And then for our community educators, there's even access to how to get the PowerPoints or the presentations and what materials are needed. So if someone wants to do the 10 warning signs and wants the latest information on the 10 warning signs, they can click that, and what will come up are instructions. You get a presenter's guide and instructions on how to download it, and also resources needed when you're doing the presentation. There's also forms available for that. That's for in-person, but we're not doing the in-person. Everything is done virtually, but you can get all this information right from our PVC. or from our PVC websites. And even support group facilitators can get information as well. And it's a great resource for our volunteers. And we try to keep it updated as much as possible, so that way our volunteers have the latest and greatest information. And also, we have a community chat that's available for our volunteers. I work for the Southeastern Virginia chapter, so my community would be the Southeastern Virginia chapter community. And if I click that, I can also, I can see our community page with our volunteer opportunities, our latest discussions. And there's also, when it comes to latest discussions, this is where our volunteers can communicate with other volunteers as well. It's not just staff members communicating with volunteers, but it's everybody is able to communicate and get information. And you can see here, we have, we post quite a bit about upcoming events and what's happening, programs for the upcoming week, and even when we have our rallies or even thank yous. So all of that is there. And then we have our library. The library is there for the volunteers. This is where they can get flyers if they need a flyer for the event that they're doing, or they can get certain forms that are needed. This is where they would find all that material. We have support group information, community education information that's available for our volunteers, and it's in it's all a click away where they can download it on their own. And this website is not utilized very well, but if you want to keep updated on the and get notifications about discussions or what has been inputted in the library, you can get that sent directly to your email. So that way you never miss a beat. You know when something's been updated, you know when a new discussion has been started, and you get that information straight to your email. And there's different ways to do that. And in the top corner here, we have our profile. If you go to that, you can set your settings up to figure out how do I get that information. And it's quite easy. You can set up your privacy settings, your email preferences, your feeds, community notifications, all of that can get sent straight to your email. And as you can see here with my profile, you even get your badges. So every time you complete something, you get a badge that comes in, and it tells you where you're at. And you can also check your inbox. As you can see, I have 12 messages just since I've been on this presentation, and from volunteers who are asking questions about upcoming programs, or I would need this, or I would need that. So this website is very helpful when it comes to information for our volunteers. We want to keep them updated, and this is something for those that are wanting to volunteer. You can see this is something that's provided to help you succeed and help you get trained, so you are very familiar and comfortable in providing programming out in the community. If we go back to the presentation, please. Thank you. We're going to talk next about the benefits of a support group. And I'd like to thank Merle, because support groups are very, very crucial and helpful for caregivers. I know I, for one, when I was caregiving for my grandmother, I needed the support group. It was a wealth of information to me. You get peer-to-peer exchange of information. You can find solutions to certain situations that you may be dealing with. And without our support group facilitators, you know, none of this can really be done. It's very tasking to our chapters if it was to fall to our staff to provide and do these support groups. So we really rely on our volunteers, and we're always looking for those support group facilitators that are wanting to help others, or even try to work out through problems even as they're caregiving as well. And so there's a lot of benefit with support groups, joining a support group, or even leading a support group. And you can always find more information about support groups on our website. Now I want to go over some information, some statistics, and this is for Region 14. Region 14, it includes all of Virginia, Maryland, and DC, and we're called Region 14, and these numbers here reflect numbers are data from July and August 2020. And as you can see here, we had over 1,637 attendees attend 447 programs that we have provided. And these are virtual programs. And 41% of those programs were delivered by volunteers, which is great. We go to the next slide, we can see when it comes to virtual community education programs, we had between July and August, we had over 70 programs in Region 14 with 871 attendees, and 33% of those programs were presented or delivered by volunteers, which is amazing. And then when we look at virtual support group programs, we had over 332 support groups with over 566 attendees, and 66% of those programs or support groups were delivered by volunteers. Now, all of these numbers where we see that are delivered by volunteers, we'd love to see those numbers rise. We want our volunteers to take ownership when it comes to delivering their or providing that support group. And we challenge our volunteers, find those, those individuals that may need a support group and have them attend your support group and talk about the support group when you're out in the community. So that way it becomes fluid and it becomes commonplace, if you will. Virtual early stage engagement programs. We had over 45 programs in Region 14 with over 200 individuals that have attended, and 27% of those programs were delivered by volunteers. And again, we'd love to see that number jump up to where it's 50% or even 100% of those programs were delivered by volunteers, where it's volunteer-led. So in review, as you can see, we couldn't have done any of that if it wasn't for you. If it wasn't for our volunteers, we couldn't have done any of that. And so we are very thankful for our volunteers, and our various chapters in our region have put together a thank you for our volunteers. As you can see here from Central Western Virginia, the staff, they say thank you. And it's a great picture, and everyone's smiling. It's a lovely group of folks there. And then from the Greater Richmond staff, saying thank you to their volunteers. Another great looking group. And from our Southeastern Virginia chapter, thank you, thank you, thank you to our volunteers. Again, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. We wouldn't be able to reach those families that are out there. However, there's still more individuals, as you saw with the data earlier that Rachel had presented. We need to reach more individuals. And by expanding our reach, as you can see on the left-hand side here, one person can reach many folks. However, if we had a group of individuals, you can see the networking that can be done where we're reaching even more folks. And that's what we'd like to see moving forward, is that network grow to where we're reaching more folks. Because as you saw with those numbers, that the data that Rachel showed, there's a lot of individuals that may benefit from the association's programs, whether it be a support group or an education. So we want them to come, and with your help, we can get them those services. We can get them to those programs that may be beneficial to them. And this is where we're challenging our volunteers, I mean, to look in their circle of influence. You know, instead of always looking in one area for individuals, we have to think outside the box. You know, some of you may go to a gym and you may know of individuals, or even just mention, I attend a support group for the Alzheimer's Association, or I facilitate a support group for the Alzheimer's Association. And if they're telling their story that they're a caregiver and would like to attend, you may just be able to recruit someone. Or they may even want to do what you do and want to volunteer as well and want that training. So there's different ways to expand our reach. And this slide here just shows you the different ways we can do so. Not only with family and friends, but even schools and just when we're out in the community, local businesses, people in the neighborhood, civic clubs, the chambers you may belong to, the different networking groups that you may belong to, just talking about it or mentioning it, you'd be surprised. The interaction that you may be able to get and discussions that you may be able to get just talking about it. So we challenge our volunteers, you know, look in your circle of influence and try to connect with those individuals and try to find new opportunities to provide education. You know, if you go to your doctor's office and you mentioned that you know you volunteer for the Alzheimer's Association as a support group facilitator, and mention to the doctor, hey, we have the association has these programs available that may benefit your clients or your families that you may see. You'll be surprised how that connection can come into play and services can be provided for them. Now we've reached a point to where if you have any questions, please use the chat feature at the bottom of the screen. And we're going to move on to our next section here. I'm going to hand over the controls. And hopefully...
Wait. Yeah, Douglas, we're going to open it up real quick for questions and take questions here and try to address anything that's been brought up throughout the presentation. And then we'll move forward with the rest of the information. So Annette, Jess, Taylor, our other lovely colleagues, if we have questions, throw them at us.
All right, I'll start out with one that popped in. I put in the chat just a question about, are you PVZ? And if not, what are some barriers? And people are very excited to learn more about it, Douglas, and appreciate the information. Some of them said they didn't know about it, and they're excited to learn about opportunities. There were two questions that wrapped around that. One was, if they've been a long-time volunteer and they've never set up their profile, do they need to do that? And then the second question kind of wrapped with that one is, if they have not set up their profile, does the inbox on the website send messages to their email that will help them to get going on that process? Douglas, you want that one or those two?
Sure, I will take that one. I'll take those two. And yes, you would need to set up your profile and set up your preferences for how you want to receive those messages. They're not just going to be automatically sent to you. So you have to set it up as to you want to receive the notifications or you want to receive those emails. And as I said, it's really easy. Once you go into your profile, you can see those privacy settings and email settings and so forth. And you just click what it is that you want. You can have it to where it comes in weekly. You can have it to where it comes in daily, or you can have it where it comes in live. As soon as the message is posted, it automatically sends it out to you. So there's various ways you can set it up. I would get with your staff partner when it comes to setting that up if you have questions or if you're struggling trying to get it set up. But it's really easy to do, but you do need to update your profile and update that information. That's going to make it very easy to get that information to you.
Okay, great. Jess, Lori, Taylor, anybody else? I've got a couple more.
Yeah, there are a few of them in here. There's a good question about volunteers receiving brochures. Can we receive brochures that we can leave at these places or hand out when we're on our travels?
And yes, I would get with your staff partner and request what those items that you are needing. Just keep in mind, because of COVID, we may not be able to get you all of that. It'll be sent through the mail. You're not going to be able to come to the office to pick everything up, which most of us have a lot of that information here in our offices. However, we can mail them to you or get them ordered to where we get them to you. One other thing, though, I want us to make note of is we're not really wanting our volunteers to go out, especially in COVID, and giving pamphlets out or flyers out just for safety reasons. When we get back into an in-person world where we're able to do that in person, then that would be a great opportunity. And by all means, yes, we can get that to you. And any other items that may be needed to help you be successful when it comes to the program that you're doing. I see someone asked, what is a staff partner? I know I've said that quite a bit. The staff partner is the staff person that you would be assigned to. For example, if you were to apply for a volunteer position here in Southeastern Virginia, I would be your staff partner. If you were to do it for the Richmond chapter, Rachel more likely will be your staff partner. And then for Central Western chapter, you may have Annette that will be your staff partner. So it just depends on which chapter and what position you apply for. I hope that answers that question. Let's see.
Yeah, it does, Douglas. And to clarify I know with Greater Richmond and Central and Western being larger areas, Central and Western, if you're considered the northern side, it would be me directly. If you're southern, it's myself or Annette. So worst case, reach out to us both, and we'll both be more than happy to help you in any way that we can.
There's a couple more that we'll throw out, and then we'll give it right back to you guys. Typically, how long is the training period if someone's interested in going through the process, Douglas?
It depends on what position you go through. And because the training is done virtually, you can go at it at your own pace. So there's no stress level of, oh, you need to get this done in a day. You can take it at your own pace, because we understand that some of our volunteers are still working. So they're going to need time. They may be able to only do a little bit of training here and then have to do work and then start up again the next day and so forth. So it takes some time. It depends on the person, but you go as fast as you need to go through when it comes to that training. Typically, if you were to do it all in one shot, you can get it done in a day. But we don't really recommend that because it's a lot of information in a very short amount of time. We want you to be proficient. So we ask that you take your time with that training and really understand what you're getting into.
Okay, I do see one more in there that Merle had asked. She's a support group facilitator. Can she have access to community program information and vice versa on PVC? Is that the question, Merle? You want to take that one, Douglas?
Why, yes, sure. Yes, you can have access to community. Well, as a support group facilitator, no, you only have access to support group information such as the training information. However, if you go it depends on where you go on the PVC. As you saw, there's that section, the library, where you can get that information. So if you wanted a flyer for an upcoming program that you want to take to your support group, you can get that flyer there. And again, it depends on, each chapter is a little bit different. I know with Southeastern Virginia, we try to post everything up as soon as we get it. And I know many of the chapters try that as well. So if you don't see a flyer there, always get with your staff partner. They're going to be able to get that information for you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Taylor, Jess, do you see any more that things are coming in pretty quickly? I may have missed some.
I think you got them all.
And thank you, Emily, for popping on and answering Mackenzie's question about walk. And I'm sure you'll answer any other questions later if needed, but I think that's it for questions at this time. Oh, wait a minute. We've got one more. Hold on. If you've trained before online training, can we get badges for online videos, or do we need to review them online?
When it comes to your training, the requirements for the position that you are want to volunteer for, the badges, you'll get those badges. For additional videos, you will not get badges. However, you can print off a certificate that you have taken that training, and that will get recorded under your profile. So we know that, okay, she has, Missy Harden had seen that video or had attended that video and watched it online. So we'll be able to know, but you want to keep that certificate, print off that certificate, but you won't necessarily get the badge unless it pertains to the position that you are looking at.
Okay, thanks. I think that's it.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Douglas, for covering majority of those questions there related to the portal. Greater Richmond and Central and Western Virginia volunteers who are on the call, I will follow up with an email to all volunteers with the information that was previously sent out related to the portal. And hopefully it'll clarify some of those questions and get us kick-started with everything that's out there. I know some of you have been out there, but I'll just resend it just as a refresher to everybody. So additional ways to get involved. We talked about the different positions to volunteer in. Other ways to get involved is our Walk to End Alzheimer and the Longest Day. I will leave all of that fun information for our colleague who will be sharing that information shortly. Another way you can get involved is to become an advocate. We need people to speak up for to our congressmen, to the House, and all of our elected officials when it comes to Alzheimer's and other dementias and the bills that are being addressed. So if that is your way of being a volunteer and letting your voice be heard, please reach out to your local Alzheimer's Association. We will get you connected with the advocacy manager, and they will get you set up and ready to go for that. And we will welcome you with open arms and provide you with everything you need to do that. Another way to get involved is through Trial Match. What this is, it's a way for you to get involved with all the many different trials that's going on with the association. Just signing up to get your name in the database does not guarantee you a trial. It does not automatically sign you up for a trial. It just simply puts your name in the database so that when a new trial comes out, they will search the database for people who meet the basic criteria of the trial that is taking place, and then you will receive an informational packet of which you will review. And ultimately, it is your decision once you read all the fine print and all the details related to that trial if you would like to participate or not. So there are many different ways for everyone to get involved, and I always say there is a place for you. So there is a place for you to get involved. And I'll see if it will let me advance. And it won't. I am going to see if, Emily, if you could go ahead and start the conversation about the walk and the longest day and share with the fine folks on the line who you are and what you do with the association?
Absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Emily Rosenberger, and I'm the constituent event manager for the Alzheimer's Association Central and Western Virginia chapter, as well as the Southeastern Virginia chapter. And I get to let you know on some more ways to get involved. First and foremost, our Walk to End Alzheimer's. While this year looks a lot different, I'm happy to say that walk is everywhere. Every sidewalk, small town, city, neighborhood, wherever you are, you can walk safely, either individually or with your family or a small team, whatever works for you. We are still walking to end Alzheimer's because Alzheimer's does not rest, so neither can we. We have walks, multiple walks in every chapter throughout the state and in every state. You can go to alz.org/walk to find your local walk. Every year, of course, the Promise Garden ceremony is so special, and we are still having that aspect included, again, just in a safe way this year. We're having drive-by Promise Gardens, and again, you can go to alz.org/walk to find your local walk and where that drive-by Promise Garden exists close to you. We would love for you to consider joining a team or starting a team. Registration is at that same link. If you raise $100, you get an awesome official 2020 walk shirt, and you can wear purple in your community. So if you have any questions, please feel free to include them in the chat. Next up, I believe I saw that longest day slide coming. So I specifically manage the longest day for our two lovely chapters. Our region includes Virginia, DC, and Maryland. And I'm so excited that we are in our 2021 season now. Registration opened at the beginning of September. So like Walk, the longest day is a signature fundraiser of the association, and both fundraisers help to support our local programs and services and overall help to move the mission forward of the Alzheimer's Association. So the longest day, it is a do-it-yourself peer-to-peer fundraising model, and it's super fun. The sky is the limit. You can do baking, you can do painting, you can run a marathon, which I personally choose not to do, but you could do a cornhole tournament, you could go skydiving, you can sew. There's so many fun ways to get involved and help raise money to end Alzheimer's. So we are looking for volunteers as well to help move the longest day forward. We have a volunteer interest meeting on October 7th at 7 p.m. It will be virtual, and I will put this information in the chat, but please consider coming to the interest meeting, and we'll find a role that suits you. Like Rachel said, we have a spot for you. In one of these roles, I promise we have a spot for you that will work for you. So again, I'll put my contact info in the chat. If you have any questions at all, please do not hesitate to reach out. And otherwise, thank you for all that you do, and letting me speak today.
Thank you, Emily. I appreciate you coming on and giving us the updated information related to the walk. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Annette Clark.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. I think you could do that marathon and the skydiving. I am happy to be here today to talk with you about the resources that the Alzheimer's Association has for support. And I think that this would be kind of preaching to the choir, because many of you are providing some of these resources, whether it's the virtual educational programs or support groups. But the one thing that I wanted to highlight today was our 24/7 helpline. And many of you are familiar with it. Maybe you've called it, maybe you've answered calls, as Merle mentioned that she has done, but it is available 24/7, 365 days out of the year. And I always give the example that it's 3 o'clock in the morning on a holiday. we are still there to answer your question. That we've got master's level clinicians that can help you to maybe brainstorm the issue or concern that you're having that day and give you some things to put in your toolkit to help with it. Or sometimes it's just really a matter of listening to you. You've had the worst day of your life and you want someone to acknowledge and be there with you. So please share that broadly. 1-800-272-3900 helpline number. So, and then I wanted to just spend a minute talking about some upcoming events that we have. These are in October, and the slide's going to come. Whoops. There we go. If we can go back just one. The Memory Care University is our 2020 webinar series, and we are very excited about it. And I know that that's a little small, so I'm going to give you just the names of each of those. On October the 7th, we're kicking it off with You Can't Keep a Good Woman Down, the impact of Alzheimer's on women caregivers. On October 14th, we're back on with faith, family, and dementia. October 21st, we're going to spend some time talking about having those difficult conversations. And the ones that we're going to highlight are hospice, driving, and intimacy. 3 biggies for sure. And then October the 28th, we're back with you, and we're going to talk about staying socially connected in a socially distant world. Okay. I hope you'll join us for those. I'm very excited to attend all of them. So with that, Rachel, I'll hand it back to you.
Thank you so much. So I shared at the very beginning that we have a volunteer who graciously is allowing us to share their story. And at this time, I would like to read that story before we close out and give the last little bit of thanks to everybody. So here's her story. When someone asks me to speak or write about my journey, I oftentimes hesitate. It's a very private story and sometimes conjures up sad memories. Then I stop to think, well, there were some fun times, and I learned a lot about the disease. I learned a lot about my dad and myself. My mom passed when I was only 40 years old. She had been diagnosed with an orphan cancer, a very rare cancer, and she passed away within 5 months of diagnosis. It was excruciating for me to watch her in such pain, but I put on my big girl pants and I moved forward. But my father didn't. He was devastated and he sank into depression. He was living on his own, and I would stop in to see him about 3 days a week, and I would make him dinner, do his laundry, vacuum or dust, and just visit with him. But I could tell the death of my mother left him vulnerable and sad. Shortly after her death, my mother-in-law was diagnosed with a brain tumor. She chose not to have any treatment, and she passed quietly out of her home with my husband's stepfather, Gramps, and myself on my birthday. At first, the changes in my dad were ever so mild. A pile of newspapers here, messiness in general, misplaced items, and repeating the same questions over and over. This coming from a man who taught me how to bounce a quarter off of my bed and ensure I made it correctly. He had always been an in-charge kind of man, but as age crept into his life, it became harder and harder for him to keep up. Missing a bill payment here and there was when I started to take note. Then one day I came to visit and I found him unconscious on the floor at the top of his steps. I called 911. At the hospital, they performed numerous stress tests and told me he had been having TIAs over a prolonged period of time, which I already knew. The following day, when all the test results were in, the doctor walked into my father's hospital room and he asked to speak to me in the hall. My stomach sank. I walked out and I looked at the doctor square in the eye, and to me he replied, "Miss, your father has dementia. Specifically, I would say it's Alzheimer's disease. Have a bad day." He patted my shoulder and he walked away. I was stunned. I knew nothing about Alzheimer's except that people forgot stuff, and thus I began my journey. The first year I hired a nurse to live with my father. It worked out great. but was quite costly, and after a year, she told me she had hurt her back and she needed surgery in 2 days. A long story short, Dad came to live with me. The move brought about further confusion and exhibited a side of my father I did not recognize. Oftentimes, he became demanding, speaking without a filter and often being rude and hurtful. This newfound habit was being up all hours of the night and roaming the house, and it threw my internal clock into a spin, and it left me exhausted. Then a couple of months later came a call from the assisted living facility where I had my aunt, of whom I was the guardian. They said she was showing signs of Alzheimer's, and they didn't feel they could care for her any longer. They wanted me to come and get her that day by 5 p.m. I was in a tailspin. Again, she came to live with me. Now Dad needed more care than I could provide. He required to be lifted in and out of the bathtub, and I quivered whenever he used the stairs. Incontinence was out of control, and the confusion he suffered regarding day and night left me exhausted and untimely seeking help. I placed him in an assisted living facility, packed my aunt up every day, and drove to see him. Later, I was forced to transfer him to a skilled nursing facility because he refused to listen to the safety directives. The guilt I felt was unbearable, and I reached out to the Alzheimer's Association. Then came the third call. The police contacted me regarding my husband's stepfather, Grants. He had been in a single car accident and didn't recall what happened. Off to the hospital I went. A series of tests and a scan revealed a combination of vascular dementia and probable Alzheimer's. To my home he came. He, however, was my biggest challenge. He wandered. My aunt had now grown completely blind due to a complication from diabetes and was now not equipped to handle the situation, and my home had stairs. So Auntie went into live where my father was residing. My days consisted of visiting Dad and Auntie and chasing after Gramps. My father, being the now strong-headed person that he had become, refused to take safety precautions as instructed. He fell and broke his hip and died 8 weeks later. I was crushed. After we buried my father, my family came unglued. Brothers who had offered no help were now telling me what I should have done and what I need to do with my other patients. As time went on, Gramps became more than I could handle. He had retreated back to a different time and was constantly seeking people who had gone before him, or thinking that he was back in World War II. This thought process led him to wander aimlessly, escaping the safe quarters I had tried to provide. After trying method after method to keep him safely contained, he left me no choice. I had to place Gramps in a secured unit, and so he joined my auntie. Soon after, my aunt passed away quietly in her sleep on her birthday. She had the end of life most people only imagine, passing quietly in her sleep, graceful, with an ever so slight smile on her face. She was ready. Gramps, however, had a tough time. He could never adjust to leaving his home. He was in an eternal pursuit of someone. Later, he contracted a contagious disease and passed away in the hospital. My journey may have ended here. I went back to work, but found it less than rewarding, and one day I received a call from the Alzheimer's Association. They asked if I would interview for a position, and they hired me, and thus began my health-related career. I am now a director of patient and public relations at a local skilled nursing, rehab, and long-term care center. Today, I wear my gray hair with pride, my worry lines with honor, and my acquired knowledge with humility and self-respect for having endured such an experience. Why? Because I earned the rite of passage. So I leave you today with this. When someone asks you why, what is your answer? Is it simply you volunteer just to give back? Or do you have a short story? And are you willing to share that story with others? Are you willing to get involved and give more? When someone asks you why, what is your answer? And with that, I would like to close with thanking Douglas, my great co-presenter. Could not have done this session without you. I also want to take time to thank our sponsors of our conference this year. We could not have done our conference without them. Our conference this year was provided free of charge to everyone because of these sponsors. So we thank them. And lastly, I thank you. I thank you, our volunteers who are on the call, who have given time to the community to share the information of Alzheimer's and other dementias, to support families who are in need. Thank you. And I would also thank all of those who are on the call with an interest. I hope that something we shared means something to you. Maybe you will reach out to your local chapter. Maybe you want to get involved. There is a place for you. We won't turn anyone away. So Douglas, do you have anything else?
I want to thank you all for what you do, and all our volunteers that are out there, and all our potential volunteers that are on this call right now. You know, if you are wanting to do something, please talk to Rachel. You can contact me as well, or you can contact Annette, even Emily. She would be happy to hear from you. So you can contact us, and we can give you more information about what we have, what opportunities are available. And thank you, thank you, thank you for all that you do and for all your continued support.
Thank you all. Stay safe, be well, and we hope to see you soon.